Hi, welcome everyone to our virtual Saturday Research Academy conference. This talk will be recorded. Let's wait some minutes until everyone arrives to start our meeting today. Thank you so much for being here, and you can write your name on the chat, and you can write something about where you're from. So while we are waiting for other participants to join us, we can have, some information about who you are. And remember to fill out the participant survey that I am just sharing that into our chat. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to our Saturday Research Academy conferences. I'm Dr. Elba Sepulveda. I'm going to be here with you moderating the activity, and we are gonna share our agenda in a few. And right now, I will say that please remember to fill out the participant survey. We need to collect some information. And if you want, you can write on the chat your name and where are you from, so we can have an idea of where are you located right now. This information is for the presenter because he wants to know about you. Also, remember to fill out the evaluation of the conference that is intended just to collect information about how do you feel, or how do you feel and how you felt about all these activities. And this will help us also to gather more information or getting other talkers or conferences like this one. So thank you so much. And I will let you, Dr. Aratia, who is gonna present our conference today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elba. Good morning to everybody, and also good afternoon to the members of our group in Moscow. Dr. Jon Hardeberg, he is a Fulbright visiting scholar. He came to Puerto Rico 2017, and he has a very interesting presentation, and he's going to join us again. Okay, this time is virtual from Norway. So I really appreciate you being in this conference, and thank you very much, Dr. Jon Hardeberg, for stay connected with us again. Okay, you can just go forward with your presentation.
No, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. It's nice to be here. It's nice to, I don't see you guys, but I have the feeling that there are a few of you listening. So that's good. I hope that we can have the time to ask some questions, or to discuss some things afterwards. Or if you see something along the way you want to ask me about, also maybe. Well, I can promise that I'm seeing the chat or seeing you. So, but you can always try. Let me see if I can share my my screen here. Let me see that. Okay. Can you see? Can you see it well now? Good.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about color and image processing. Also, color management is a topic I will talk about. So I will start by explaining a little bit where I'm from. This picture here is from Norway. I am from Norway. My university is the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, or we call it NTNU for the Norwegian abbreviation. For those of you who are locally know a little bit about Norway, the headquarters is in Trondheim, but my campus where I work is in a small town called Gjøvik. Our university is the largest university in Norway. We like to think we're the best also, but that's much harder to measure. But largest we can say, because we can just count the number of students, so that's easy. But Norway is a very small country. We are like 5 million people in total in the entire country. So being largest in Norway doesn't mean all that much, you might say. To narrow in, I'm in the Department of Computer Science. That department is also in 2 campuses, Gjøvik and Trondheim, and we do research in all kind of a lot of different areas within computer science. I will not talk about those in detail. Say just briefly about some of the study programs we have in Gjøvik. Of course, in the entire university or entire department, there are many study programs, but specifically those we have in Gjøvik. There's a computer engineering or engineering in computer science program and a programming course on the bachelor level, and then on the master level we have a 2-year master called Applied Computer Science. And one that I'm particularly fond of myself, because I kind of have been a part of the creation of it, is a European program on computational color and spectral imaging. And I like that particularly well because that's kind of my research area, and it's so nice to be able to have a master program that is it's kind of specialized in an area. But as you might see when I'm presenting a little bit more here, color and image processing might be a speciality, but it's also something that you find everywhere when there's a need for this kind of science and technology in many places. So maybe someday I will see some of you back in that master program. So in terms of research, I belong to what we call the Norwegian Color and Visual Computing Laboratory, or the Color Lab for short. And we started out about 20 years ago, coming from, let's say, printing engineering, graphic arts. That was kind of where the activity started. And there was like this understanding that, okay, we need research to be able to get the colors right, because color is a difficult thing. Well, color printing had been around for a long time, but then came along the more digital, both digital printing and computers and displays, and how to get the colors to match, right? That was the big problem. And that's when the research activity started around color management and color imaging. Now we are a large laboratory. I was the first professor here, but then we have grown, and now we're kind of a large group with several professors, associate professors, and PhD students, and we're doing a lot of interesting stuff. Still, a little bit centered around, or this kind of core question of how to get the same colors in different devices and different media, how to reproduce images on a display, on print, on different displays, with using different cameras, etc., and get the same color. That is something maybe you haven't thought about that. Maybe that's just you just take that for granted. But it has been, and it still is an interesting and an important problem. So that is kind of the start of the core of the research. But now we work with what we can say the field of color imaging, but applied in many different areas: cultural heritage, medical, graphic arts, printing, security, machine vision, computer vision, and image quality and appearance. Those are kind of some areas. I could talk a long time about that, but I won't. I will just kind of give you some kind of glimpses of the areas. And let's say cultural heritage, meaning anything from archaeological objects and paintings, and objects like this, using imaging to analyze, to document, to study these works of art is something that we are doing a lot. Particularly, we use multispectral and hyperspectral imaging, which is kind of an extension of the normal color imaging, a lot in that area. The painting on top here is a Norwegian painting, the Scream. I don't know if you've seen that before. It's quite world famous painting. Not the one to the left here. That is kind of false color because we have analyzed it with our imaging technologies, but the piece to the right here. Medical imaging, a big area, a lot of images in medical, and also color images in many areas. This image here is just an example of a camera onto a little pill. And then, you know, if you have a problem in your, stomach or, intestines, you can swallow this and it goes through the whole system and it takes up a movie actually. But then to process that movie, to kind of recognize whether there are problems, or what we have focused on also is to try to improve the quality of the images that comes out of that. And that's just one example in the medical field. In printing, I mentioned the problem of the color, but now, we have merged into not just printing flat object, but starting to print up the surface structure. As here, you can kind of see that there is a topography, that is printed all the way into 3D printing. So that's an area we are working a lot, doing a lot of research now in 3D printing, and particularly how to control the color and appearance of 3D printed objects. Security related application. There's a lot. This is a case of what we can call watermarking, where we play with or we manipulate the printing process so that we can kind of print an invisible watermark that, to the right here, it's become visible with ultraviolet light. If you can shine ultraviolet light onto the image, we can see the watermark. I also mentioned quality. I actually, usually when I have a presentation like this, I usually have talked quite a lot about image quality, but I will not have time to do that today because we don't have so much time. But how to measure the quality of an image? So there's quantification. How can we, with quantifiable data, how to measure the quality of an image? That is a very, very interesting problem, and it's very useful. I mean, because if we could measure the quality of an image, then we could optimize the quality. We could make sure we get the best possible quality in our system if we can measure it. But if we cannot measure it, or if our way to measure it is not perfect or is wrong, then we are not getting the best possible images out from our systems. So this is a kind of a problem that applies to many different fields where images are used, how to kind of get the best possible quality of the images. So there's a big research area again. And we, both in the group, but also beyond the group, we collaborate a lot nationally, internationally, because a lot of these applications, a lot of these areas we're working in are also very interdisciplinary. So we need people with different competences and different backgrounds to work together to solve the problems, both industrial problems and more fundamental technological and scientific problems. So that was just a quick intro to the kind of research background or environment that I'm working in, the Color Lab, the Norwegian Color and Visual Computing Laboratory. I will now see if I can switch just to another slide set. Hopefully that goes well. So in the meantime, you can write something in the chat if you like, while I am trying to push the right buttons here. It's difficult when I try to talk at the same time. So share screen again. Okay, do you see a black screen with some text on it now? Okay, I see some nodding, very good. So now I will talk about color, okay? And about color, a little bit of color science, and also we will introduce a concept we call color management. So you know a little bit what this is about. So, and why do we do this? Well, I think that I don't know where you are, what you're studying, where you are in the studies, or what you will study in the future, what you will work with in the future. But I think many of you will somehow work with color images, or you are used to that. You have your, I don't know, your mobile phone with amazingly good cameras and the display, which is really, breathtaking. You have that in your pocket all the time. Or maybe you're using, the webcam for the conference like this. Maybe you will get into the problem of saying, well, can we improve the quality of the images from the system? Maybe just an example of an application here. Think about cars. It could be self-driving cars, or just cars driving with security systems, being able to recognize, okay, there's a pedestrian here in the road, or be able to follow the road. I mean, there's a lot of imaging, a lot of cameras in modern cars, and it can be fatal if they are not doing the work right. So there is imaging. Well, we talked about cameras, but then there's the display side, very important. Printing, still relevant. I mentioned 2.5D, 3D printing, and to get all of this to work together, there's also a lot of computer science programming, putting things together and things like that. So there's a lot of fields where you might actually need to deal with images, color images. And then I want to tell you that you need to know actually a little bit about the fundamentals of color. So we will spend some time to talk about color, and then there is this problem that I have mentioned a little bit before also, that these different devices doesn't treat colors the same way. So how can I be sure that the image I'm showing to you here look the same on your screens? Now I can't really make sure that, but there's things you can do to have to increase the chances of that, to have more consistent reproduction of colors. And this question of image quality, as I said, we will not have time to go so much into it as otherwise I would like. So a little bit color science, color management. So okay, then let's start. We're starting with the basics. So what is color, right? I don't see you very well here, but so I don't know if anyone wants to write something in the chat or comment on that. But everyone knows what color is, right? It's a super simple question until you try to articulate it. Can you actually tell me what color is? Well, then it's not that easy, maybe. Well, there are many answers. This is not the answer I'm looking for. Okay, this is the definition of color by the Optical Society of America a long time ago, and it's a kind of a long text here that makes you maybe a little bit anxious. But I would like just to point out one very important thing with the definition of color is visual sensation here. So color is a visual sensation. Now, well, I believe you're kind of thinking about studying science and technology, engineering, those kind of hard sciences, right? But I'm here to tell you now that color is not just physics, or color is psychophysics. Okay, you have the physical world, but you have to have the human in the loop to be able to talk about color. So actually, well, we can get philosophical around this question a little bit. I don't know if you have I know you have studied kind of basic philosophy. I don't know. Then there is this famous question here: when a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, is there a sound?
Yes.
Well, it's not a silly question, because sound is also psychophysics. There are waves in the air, but is there a sound? I would argue not. And the same thing with color, actually. If we want to kind of believe my when I'm saying that color is a sensation, then if no one is there to see it, then the tree is not green. And I'm not the only one to say this, you know. And okay, just think about this a little bit. You know, maybe you don't agree with me. You know, maybe you think that no, this is bullshit. Well, okay, just bear with me. And okay, we can go back a little bit. Okay, let's look at the little bit more physical things. Okay, we have light. Okay, you know, Newton found out that the white light is not just kind of white. It belongs, you know, it has photons with different wavelengths. So there's a kind of, you can represent this as a graph here or as a mathematical function. The spectral power distribution of the light. For every wavelength, how much energy is there? How many photons are there with the different wavelengths, right? That is a characteristic of the light. And then that light hits a surface, and then some of the photons gets absorbed into the surface, and some get reflected. And that kind of ratio between how much is reflected and how much is absorbed is also different from wavelength to wavelength, depending on the property of that surface. And that can be described by another mathematical function, the spectral reflectance. For every wavelength, you know, how big proportion of the light is reflected and how much is absorbed. And then, well, you know, the eye. Okay, I could talk a long time about how the eye works. You know, it's a very amazing, you know, instrument, organ. But the fact is that there are 3 different photosensitive cells on the retina on the back of the eye, and they are sensitive to different parts of the visible spectrum. So you can represent those sensitivities like these 3 curves here. Then very nicely now, for those of us who actually think that math is not so frightening, is actually quite nice to see that you can now describe color with this very nice linear equation, the integral of these 3 functions that I mentioned. And so you actually represent colors with a color with 3 numbers here. So this is nice. This is scientific, right? This is, you know, engineering. You know, we like to put up some nice models like this. Now, I will. Okay, so I don't hope you have your image in full screen, so you can do what I'm telling you now. Just look at this. Stare at the black spot in the middle. Just keep your gaze fixed to the little black spot. Just keep it there. Just keep looking. Did you see something? Is it all white, or did you see something there? You didn't see it, so I see some, you know. So I'll just try it once more. So just do it again. Just keep looking. Keep your gaze very still. And then keep looking. You saw something, right? Physically,
I already see the flag.
Yeah, you saw a flag. Wonderful. If you saw the Norwegian flag, then you will get an extra point. So the red, white, and blue flag is the Norwegian one. So thank you very much. There's nothing we can measure here, right, on this white screen, but you still saw something, right? So this is one example where where this model I just showed you doesn't work. You know, if you go back to this equation here, that would say 0. There's no signal. There's no color there, right? Or it's white. You know, so the human visual system does not follow that model, but the model is still very useful. It's still a basis for how we can measure color. We can go further in terms of really looking into kind of how to compare, let's say, the eye now with a sensor, an imaging sensor, because the eye is an imaging sensor, right? That's kind of how we are seeing the images in the world. It goes through the eye. So this is an illustration of kind of similarities and differences between the retinal or eye, the distribution to the left, where we can see these 3 different photosensitive cells, and the camera sensor that also has 3 different photosensitive cells, but organized very differently. And it's quite amazing that if you look at the sensor, you know, the eye to the left, it's very non-uniform, right? These blue sensors, there are none of them in the middle. Like if I go back here, this, to me, it doesn't look like a good engineering design, right? Why would you not have any blue sensors in that area in the middle? And, you know, and if I compare this, you know, if we, you know, this image here, I haven't made it, but people have actually been able to take, with adaptive optics, they can take photos of the retina, and then by identifying the different cells and coloring them in the images of light, we could get illustrations like this. If we did this on different people, it would vary a lot, you know, not just randomly varying, but the proportion of the different cells vary a lot between different people. So that's also not very good design. But amazingly, we see the world, you know, perfectly. Well, you know, maybe not because we maybe have glasses, or we could be color deficient, or there are, you know, so perfectly is a relative world. But it's quite amazing how well we see the world when the sensor is like this. So, but this kind of mathematical model, you know, that I showed you earlier, even if it doesn't always work, we showed an example of this, it's still the basis of what we can call the colorimetry, how to measure color. So you can set up, you know, there are a set of equations, it's standardized, you know, and we have to kind of find out these kind of characteristic curves for the visual system based on a standard average observer, because we are different, but still we see things quite the same. So it makes sense to use an average kind of definition of how we see color. And that has really been the basis for communicating color, for defining color spaces where we can kind of put numbers on the color. And I mean, there are many different color spaces. We could talk about that. You know, I mean, we call it color space. It's kind of this name we use for it, just because we can represent color by 3 numbers, and, you know, 3 dimensions. Well, that's like the 3-dimensional world we live in, which we call kind of the physical space. So we can talk about the color space because it's a 3-dimensional representation of color. Then we can transform that into different spaces, or we can look into spaces that are defined from the color science, or that are defined from display technology that defines a color space, or printing defines another type of color space. Very, you know, interesting thing here we could talk about in terms of color mixing, for instance, you know, with what are the primaries, how is color made on a monitor, on a screen, by mixing this, you know, red in green and blue, and how is color made in printing, or when you paint, because then you also mix primaries, but it's not the same primaries. It's not the same way color is created, you know. In one case, on the monitor, different lights are added to each other. We talk about additive color mixing. On a piece of paper, when you put color on top of it, you kind of remove every layer you put on with a drawing on the paper, you remove some of the reflected light. So we call it subtractive color mixing. And then it's not the same primer, it's completely different way to create color. Still, we would like to be able to see the same color on a screen as we do on a print. So this is a lot of interesting things around this. Another case of color space is where you try to separate the lightness information from the color, you know, the hue and the chroma and stuff like that. That is very important for, you know, in many imaging applications. In here, I don't know if you've seen the YCB color space, for instance, where you kind of you do this transformation into the lightness and then the color part, as you can see to the right here. I will not talk much more about this right now. sRGB color space, the standardized RGB color space has been very useful. It was, the industry like HP and Microsoft and others agreed at some point to a common definition of a color space. This is one key to communicating well, being able to communicate color information is to agree on the standards. So sRGB was important in that sense. LAB color space and other color space. I will just kind of mention that quickly. But just to recap a little bit here now, you remember kind of what I said about color. Perceived color depends on the light source, its spectral composition, the spectral reflectance of the surface, and then the spectral sensitivity of the eye. Those three parts. And put up the equation and stuff like that. But that's not enough. This is the basic of colorimetry, but you need to know that sometimes that, and very often that fails. You have to take into account other things also. And now I will just show you some examples of this. And this is really what we talked about the retina, the sensor, right? But after the sensor, there's a whole human visual system in the brain that processes, our visual, our images, the colors that come from the retina into how we perceive the world. And that's an amazing system. Now, so some examples. This is the map of the tube, the underground in London. And I want you to look at the circle line, the yellow circle line here in the middle. And I'm not, it depends a little bit on how you're sitting. But to me, in the bottom part here, that yellow looks like lemonish, maybe greenish yellow. And up here, that yellow looks almost orange. And if we look at the RGB values, or if we went in and precisely measured the colors of these two parts, they would be exactly the same. But we see them differently. Yes?
What is that? That in the image?
What is what?
The image, the image. I don't speak English too much. The image. Yes. What is that?
What I'm showing here is the map.
Map of what?
Of London.
Of what?
Of London, of the subway.
Is it the transportation? Yes, that's what.
Yes, the transportation network, trains.
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
So this is a typical map design, and what I just want to point out as an example here is that the same printed color or the same measurable color looks very different. So here and here, the yellow actually looks different, even if they are printed in the same way, they would be measured in the same way. Another example here. I would ask you to think about what you're seeing, and if I'm not mistaken, you would say that maybe you have to the left a greenish cross on a kind of bluish background, and on the other side you have more like a bluish cross on a greenish background. I think many would agree on that. But if you look closely to the bottom here, I can tell you that these two crosses, they have the same RGB values. So now this is a case where we have to think about what is the definition of color, because I could say to you that these two crosses have the same color, and I could say to you that clearly, as you're seeing, these two crosses do not have the same color. But now I'm using two definitions of color somehow. When I say they have the same color, I mean the physically measurable color or the RGB values, they are exactly the same. But the color, as I've insisted to you what color is not the same, because you see it differently. Color is a sensation. So clearly those two crosses have different color. That would be my answer to the exam question, and I would insist on this. But it's also meaningful to be able to say that the crosses are made in the same way, the RHB values are the same, etc. So this is an interesting, just an example like that. Another example, this is a kind of a test photo that Professor Hunt from the UK, he made this a while ago. You can see it's not the style is not that modern, but then this kind of picture, this slide for a slide projector, he took a piece of plastic and put on top of the shirt, on top of the pillow. So you can see you have this yellow pillow, and then you put a piece of cyan plastic, and it looks green. Okay. This is okay. This is subtractive color mixture. You kind of put two colors on top of each other, and then they make a new color. So that's nice. So yellow plus cyan makes green. Now he took that piece of plastic away and put the same color plastic on the whole image. So I go back, put this one, and then on the whole image. What is the color of the pillow now? It's yellow again. But physically, it's exactly the same. Here, the pillow, and here, the pillow is exactly the same, but we perceive it differently. So the colors change, even though the physics is the same. So here I kind of just go through that again, kind of the step by step. And this is actually just this example here. One of the reasons why it's so interesting to work with color images. Just because it's not, you don't just find the answer by measuring and defining the math, you have to go beyond that. So this illustrates how we actually adapt to the surrounding. It could be what we can call white balance for cameras, for instance, that tries to do the same. But it's very difficult, and still researchers haven't fully understood how this works actually. So another example, this is fun, I like it. So this is a computer graphics image. So you would probably describe this as a grayish kind of top or part and a whitish bottom part. But if I now kind of do this, I just took the gray thing, and the color, the RGB values of my image of those two parts are exactly the same, but they look extremely different here. You would never think that these two parts have the same color, right? And then comes this one. Have you seen this before? Yes. This. So can you write? What are the colors of this? Can anyone write in the chat? Gold and white, yes. Blue, black. What? Gold and white and blue and black? Those are very, very different answers, right? So you've probably seen this before. Black and blue, yes. No, I don't agree with you. Blue and brown, okay. We could do statistics on this. What is so special with this one is that people disagree so much, so strongly. It's true that in many other cases, there are many other examples of things that we see slightly different, because I told you our vision system is different. All right, but very often we kind of see the same thing. Here, things are really going weird. So it's so fun, this was when this kind of came out and it got viral and everyone sent it around, and I got calls from the newspapers, as a color scientist, what can you tell us about that? And it was really fun to be a color scientist, when this came out. So so I could try to explain it a bit more, but I will just leave you with that. You can find some pretty good explanations now on the internet, and also why this is so special. Okay, this is so fun, but so I'm running out of time. Apparently, the right question, or right answer to the exam is that this is how it looks. this is how it is. This is how it was when it was sold. This is how you would usually see it. But I don't like. I think it's blue. I think it's white and gold. Anyway, so we just have a few minutes left for. Then I will kind of talk this one. By the way, just look at it. I mean, it's just annoying. Right, this is just to make you mad, but it's just an example of the weird things that our human visual system is doing to you, because there's no animation here. I'm not doing anything. I'm just showing it. You are seeing black dots and white dots, and that's okay. So now I will talk just a little bit about color management. This was an introduction to the field of color science and how we perceive color and all of that. And now we will get just a little bit more practical here. So the problem is that the different displays, printers, cameras, scanners, whatnot, they do not work in the same way. They do not produce color in the same way. And not just, we talked a little bit between a display and a printer, an additive and subtractive color mixture, completely different technologies, but just between different monitors, different scanners of the same type, they will handle color differently. So take one photo, a printed photo, and scan it on two scanners, and you will get different files. So take the same digital file and print it on two different printers, you will get different results. And we also, as don't know exactly how to quantify and measure and communicate color. So how then, when we have, in our world today, we have very complex systems. Like I have my mobile phone, and I would like to send an image to you, and I would like you to see it in the same way as me, right? It's not just between my camera and my display, or it's not just a color copy machine that actually has been around for a very long time and working well, because it's one machine. You can tune it to work by itself. Now, with different devices working together, it becomes really complicated. And then I will just kind of tell you the core idea of color management is to not try to understand all these different paths at the same time, but to kind of centralize the problem to so that all the time you go through a common representation, a device independent color space, a profile connection space, a common language, you might say. If you know languages, I know we could say that if we all translated from our native languages into Esperanto, I don't know if you even know Esperanto, but it was proposed as an artificial language, that no one speaks naturally. But if everyone just learned that, then the whole world, we could just learn one extra language, everyone, and now it's a little bit English that works that way. Everyone kind of learns English, but so the same way, we have to have now dictionaries or profiles to convert between the languages, color languages of the different devices and this common language. And that is really the core concept. And around that now, when you now want to make a reproduction from an input to an output device, you need to put two dictionaries together, from Russian to Esperanto, from Esperanto to Norwegian. If you couple those together, then we can communicate, right? We don't have to make a specific dictionary between our two languages, because that's more difficult. And that now is color management is a standard now. If you look into the deep insides of your computer or your operating system, you will find support for color management there. And then in terms of how to make the dictionaries, we could talk about this for a while. You have to have some reference targets. Here we start with a color target as a piece of photography that we, with known colors, we scan it on our particular scanner, and then we compare the measured color with what the scanner saw, and we try to mathematically model that relationship, and that mathematical model then becomes the dictionary. And similarly for a printer, we print some known colors, we measure what actually is the color that comes out of it, and then we have these two data sets, and we can try to mathematically model the relationship between them. That becomes our dictionary. And suddenly that, I'm at 45 minutes and I came through the topics I wanted to mention. I see that there was some questions a while back on the pill I mentioned, the pill cam. Can it replace medical procedures like endoscopies? That's kind of the idea, that it can replace endoscopies, but of course it's not. It has its pros and cons. The image quality currently is not that good. It's kind of expensive because it's, as far as I know now, single use. You can use it only once. Throw it away. But I think it's a very interesting technology. So I'm looking at the questions earlier, but you can also speak up. Okay, question: what is the photosensitive function of colorblind people? Very, I have been told first by the people who really do research on this that we should not say colorblind, we should say color deficient, or sometimes color weak, because it's not like they don't see color at all. They just see color very differently, and there's a whole set of cases. I mean, if you just imagine the three photosensitive, the three curves, right? In some cases, yes, one of them is missing, so they only have two. And then they could, in other cases, another one is missing, or the other one is missing. In some cases, some are shifted, so that they're almost overlapping. And in some cases, some are weak. I mean, there are different cases of color deficiency. It's a very interesting topic because, for many reasons. One is, like, by studying how color deficient people see things, we can also learn more about the vision system as a whole. Just because we have a known anomaly, and then we can kind of compare how we see things. It's also interesting to see, can we, let's say, compensate? Can we take an image and say, well, if that image should be shown to a color deficient person, could we change that image so that it would be better? People have tried to say, well, can we make glasses that make color deficient people see better? It's challenging. Of course, if you're missing one of the cones, you cannot recreate that by adding glasses. But you could possibly enhance what you don't, enhance the signal somehow, so that you could see something better. So that's an interesting area of research. Yes, more questions by chat or by voice? You can see my email here. You can note it down, and you can send me an email if you want to kind of know more about some of these things. I could talk much more about the different research we're doing. Also, I just mentioned a few of the areas, but there's so many interesting things going on, and it's as I said, I mean, color images are everywhere in our mobile phones and our cars, and they are, in computer vision systems, so all over. So there's plenty of things to do. I could talk about things like learning-based methods, deep learning and stuff like that. So if you kind of combine knowledge about the optics and how to create the images and the image processing with the advanced data science that you have today, it's amazing what the computer can, extract information from images. So that's a very potent field. Yes, Leonid, I see your hand raised.
Thank you so much for all your information. I want to ask you about, I know that people are using their cameras to take photos everywhere, and there are some people that are interested in taking photos to the sky using a telescope. And I was just wondering if you can give us some tips for the students that are willing to take those photos, and what they can expect from a photo taken from their camera to the world around them, or just to take a photo on the sky, let's say. Okay.
I don't know. That was a difficult question. In some way, what they can expect. I don't.
Or do you know about the quality of the image? What do they need, to have a good quality? That is
Well, okay. So I could talk without going into the astronomical or to take pictures of the sky, because that's I don't have so much with that. But it's very interesting to see the evolution of the cameras on the mobile phones as compared to the more traditional cameras, because, well, I would still argue that you're making things very difficult for yourself for making a good picture when you have a small, tiny little lens like this, compared to a single, single lens SLR camera with a large lens, because basically your signal is the light, and the more light you actually are able to capture, the more you have to start with in order to make good images. So I would, this is typically what I talk to students about, really the basics of that. But then actually what happens in the mobile phones is that there is so much computation afterwards. There is so that it's actually amazing how good images you get with this. So I take most of my pictures with the mobile phone these days, because I always have it with me, and it's just amazing how good the images are. And that is a result of the field of, let's say, color imaging over several years to kind of process this very few photons that you captured, because the aperture is so small, into really good images. So yeah, so mobile phone cameras are really good, and more than you would expect. I see some hands raised also.
Yes.
So I think Leonid, you were first.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Hey.
You
Hello,
just told that you don't want to go to the sky, but I have a problem from the sky.
Okay.
Me and my student, we are analyzing space telescope star database, I mean,
Yes.
Gaia mission. And maybe you know that astronomers, we measure the brightness of the star using magnitudes, like from first very bright star to ninth and in the Gaia archive, we have 3 measurements, like red color, yellow color, and blue color of the star, but it is given in the star magnitudes, like, for example, tenths, 10.1, 10.3 in different bands. And I cannot find any function which can convert this 3-band photometry into the color to represent it on the screen of computer. Maybe I can write you a letter and you can help me with this. It should be very simple task for such specialists as you, but when I use conversions like XYZ to RGB or BV to RGB, I cannot find solution.
It's interesting. So I haven't worked with that particular kind of signals or images, and rarely there is a simple solution to things. That's very often the case. But feel free to send an email and we can discuss that. I think one of the problems lies in the dynamic range of your signal. I think that's one, because you talk orders of magnitude, right? So how to
subtract the average magnitude from all the bands, and then I have positive, negative values, so difficulties.
Yeah, but also you need to reduce because you have a high dynamic range of your signal, and we want to represent that in a very low dynamic range on a screen. That is a well-known problem also, because even without looking at the sky, just looking out in the world, the difference in brightness between the dark shadows and the direct sun is much higher than you can ever reproduce on your screen. So then even this kind of the approach of trying to measure and try to reproduce exactly what you see is not possible, because the screen is limited in dynamic range. And if you look into the sky like this, you mentioned this, you know, there is a large range in dynamic range, so that can be one thing. The other one is that I didn't quite understand how you talk about yellow and green and how that was defined. But let's look into that. Sure. Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you. Thanks.
There was a second hand, I thought, but I see it went down again, or did anyone have
Yeah, Chris was trying to ask a question. Well, if we don't find it.
Yeah. So, but I think maybe our time is, I've gone about my time also, so.
Yeah, John, thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting. I hope you will get in touch with Leonid and try to find out the solution for this.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So thank you very much.
And for everyone, do not hesitate to send an email if you have something you want to kind of. I cannot promise to answer right away because I get so many emails, but I'm always interested in discussing, you know, color and image stuff. So don't hesitate.
Thank you so much for all the information that you provide us. I think that knowing a little bit more about color and how color is being seen by the computer and all that research that you are doing is just awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I want to share my screen because I want to say that we needed, you know, to fill out the surveys. Also, we want to thank our sponsor, that is Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund. That is the agency that is funding our conferences. Also, Scientific Caribbean Foundation of Puerto Rico. So it would be nice if you go into this page and then scroll down until you find all the next conferences and go in and get information about our future things, like the next presentation that is going to be next Saturday about biopreservation of cells and engineered tissues. So feel free to go to the website and just register yourself. This is our verification of attendance for today. Please take a screenshot. And thank you so much to Dr. Jon Hardeberg. That was amazing, giving us information about how color is being seen while you are processing an image. Thank you. I will stop recording. If somebody wants to make or ask some questions, you are allowed to. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful one.